I'm Alex, the archetype of a carefree teen who chases whimsy and mischief like second nature. I live by a simple creed. Why not? Enjoy the moment because seriousness can wait. My sister Emily, 2 years my senior, moves to a different rhythm. She's the dependable one, the achiever who seems to be born with an invisible halo of responsibility. Where I'm content to float, she strides with purpose, organized and steady. I admire that in her. But I also love to stir the pot. Pranks are my love language. A fake spider tucked under a pillow, a strategically placed whoopee cushion, once turning her shampoo an absurd shade of green. These small rebellions are woven into our family lore. Last week, though, I pushed past my usual harmless mischief. Emily had been laboring over a major school presentation for weeks, arranging every slide and sentence with painstaking care. It was the centerpiece of her public speaking course, something she hoped would crown her as class valedictorian. To her it was a work of art. To me it was a tempting stage for a bit of comedy. I meant only to keep things light. I swapped her flash drive with one of mine, a collection of our childhood antics and embarrassing home videos, imagining a quick reveal and a shared laugh after the initial shock. But the trickster in me quietly plotted an even bolder flourish. Under the cloak of night I crept into her room. Emily slept like an island of calm. Heart racing with a mix of thrill and guilt, I completed the swap while her slow breaths rose and fell. I fled into the shadows, certain I'd slipped away unseen. Morning arrived and she left for school, rehearsing her lines in a hush of concentration. From the kitchen I watched her go, cereal in hand, my grin almost betraying me. At the auditorium I lurked in the back rows, a phantom waiting for the punchline. When Emily mounted the stage, poised and composed, I felt the charge of anticipation. She plugged in the drive with the confidence of someone who had practiced each pause and inflection until it was seamless. Instead of her polished deck, the projector sprang to life with clips from our past. Emily crowned in a tangle of spaghetti, Emily flying over her bike, Emily smeared in mud like a battle-hardened child. Laughter rippled through the audience, a wave that swallowed the careful world she had built slide by slide. For a moment Emily froze, stunned, then flushed with shock. She tried to steady herself, but the moment had been stolen. As the laughter swelled, the seriousness of what I'd done unfolded in my chest like a cold fist. This was not the gentle, mutual teasing I'd imagined. This was an erasure of the work she'd poured her heart into. When she looked out into the crowd and her eyes landed on me, they carried a sense of betrayal so sharp it took my breath away. She unplugged the drive and fled the stage, tears blazing at the corners of her eyes. I followed her after the presentation, my apologies already forming into a frantic jumble. At home, the house felt cavernous when she didn't answer my calls. Behind her closed bedroom door I heard quiet, broken sobs that pierced whatever smug satisfaction I might once have felt. When our parents found out, their anger was fierce, but it was nothing compared with the hurt in Emily's face when she finally stepped into view. The damage wasn't only to a grade or a speech, it was to trust. Then she took me to the wardrobe. "It's time," she said with a level voice that allowed no argument. My cheeks flamed. I protested ineffectually. She simply presented the clothing as if placing a mask before me. A lacy bra, delicate panties. My protest collapsed into a bewildered compliance, and an odd cocktail of vulnerability and curiosity washed over me as I dressed. Emily watched critically, then with an approving nod, selected a snug dress and helped me into it. The fabric clung to unfamiliar contours. I felt exposed and strangely alive at once. She guided me to the vanity and began to transform my face with the same meticulous care she used for her presentations. Foundation evened the skin, blush added warmth, shadow created depth, mascara lengthened lashes I had never noticed before, and lipstick sealed the change with a neat line of color. As she worked, she explained each step like a patient tutor. My reflection shifted subtly into something softer, more delicate. My features smoothed, my lips seemed fuller, my eyes became broader windows, and I found myself studying a stranger who bore my name. When she finished, she stepped back and surveyed her handiwork. "There you go," she said, a hint of triumph threading through her tone. "You look stunning." She spoke a name I'd never heard myself called aloud before. Alexa. And it hung in the air like a label that suddenly fit. I stood there, an odd blend of wonder and astonishment roiling inside me, not yet certain which feeling dominated. What began as a prank meant to spark laughter had become a fracture between us. Seeing her humiliated had exposed a boundary I'd ignored. The makeover that followed was equal parts consequence and strange intimacy. It brought with it an unanticipated closeness and a vulnerability I hadn't counted on. Emily's actions that afternoon, from the hurt she bore to the composure with which she exacted this small reckoning, forced me to see the cost of my games. I was left confronting more than embarrassment. I had to reconcile my hunger for mischief with the real people my jokes touched. The house later settled into a new, brittle quiet. My reflection in the mirror, Alexa, looked back with a complicated expression I didn't yet understand. The prank had been legendary as I'd wanted, but not in the way I'd hoped. It left a ledger of feelings to be repaired, apologies to be earnestly offered, trust to be rebuilt slowly, and an awareness that some boundaries I thought elastic are in fact fragile. And underneath all that practical fallout sat a quieter discovery. A curiosity about identity, appearance, and the odd power of being seen in ways you never expected. Would Emily forgive me quickly? Would our banter return to its old rhythm? I didn't know. I only knew that from then on my pranks would have to pass through a new internal filter. Is the joke worth the person? The answer, I realized, should always come before the laughter. I began to move through the world with a new air, an unexpected confidence that felt both borrowed and genuine. The name Alexa settled around that emerging persona like a ribbon. Unfamiliar, intriguing, and somehow fitting. Emily handed me a pair of stilettos, sliding them onto my feet with practiced ease. "Time for a trial run," she said, tugging my arm gently toward the hallway. My first steps were tentative, the sudden elevation and narrow balance unfamiliar and demanding. Each footfall felt precarious, an experiment in gravity and nerve. Emily never scolded, she coached. Her voice was steady, patient, a calm melody guiding me to find my center. Slowly the wobble eased. The hall became a studio and I learned to walk taller, inhabit the shoes with a growing composure. Mornings took on a ritual of quiet transformation at Emily's vanity. She taught me makeup like a careful craftsperson showing an apprentice the tools of a trade. Foundation came first, smoothing and unifying until my skin looked like an even canvas. Concealer was a subtle sleight of hand, erasing the tired shadows and small betrayals of acne. She showed me how blush could warm the cheeks, how soft color could bring life to a face that still felt strange to my own hands. Contour was geometry, shadows and highlights carved to bring definition where before there had been only blunt edges. Eyes became a study in focus. Shadow to create depth, liner to sharpen intent, mascara to lengthen each lash and open the gaze. The final application of lipstick felt ceremonial, a line of color that closed the circle and announced the finished face. Emily's instruction extended beyond pigments and powders. Her lessons included posture and the choreography of small gestures. She walked me through the wardrobe like a conductor revealing a symphony's instruments. Fabrics, colors, accessories, each had its place and purpose. She explained how the right bag could anchor an outfit, how shoes should be chosen not only for their looks but for the way they changed your carriage. We spent long afternoons pulling pieces, layering textures, testing silhouettes in front of the mirror until outfits felt natural instead of theatrical. Looking chic, she taught me, was the art of appearing effortlessness when much had actually been considered. Mastering stilettos was merely the opening movement. Emily showed me how to stand so that the spine seemed to lift from the base of my skull, how to tilt a hip with a painter's subtlety, how to place my hands so that even resting them looked deliberate. She set small exercises: balance with a book on my head, walk in a straight line with measured turns, speak while maintaining eye contact without letting the smile harden. Every exercise was about refinement, smoothing rough edges until my motions read as intentional and relaxed rather than rehearsed. She coached my manners as carefully as my makeup. The way I held a fork, the angle at which I lifted a glass, the pace at which I chewed, even these tiny behaviors were rituals of elegance in Emily's view. She taught me modulation in speech, how to let silence hang like punctuation, how to make a compliment land as authentic rather than flattery. We practiced listening, not just waiting for our turn to talk, and answering from a place of curiosity rather than reflex. Her model of poise included warmth. She wanted me to be graceful without becoming remote. As the days passed, an unfamiliar delight took root. I began to welcome the embodiment of femininity Emily was helping me discover. It was not just clothes or makeup. It was a set of languages for presenting myself. Posture, tone, cadence, and presence. When I stepped out into the world as Alexa, that name slipping off the tongue and settling like a new skin, I felt a kind of ripe possibility. The persona radiated assurance in small, tangible ways. My shoulders fell into place, my voice softened around vowels, my movements carried a confident economy. Still, I remained Alex at heart, impulsive, irreverent, and quick to laugh. My free-spirited nature colored everything I did. The creed I lived by was simple and stubborn. Why not? Enjoy what's here, defer solemnity. Emily, 2 years older, lived to a different metronome. She was meticulous and proud of it, the quintessential achiever whose sense of duty seemed almost innate. Where I skirted the edges of rules for the thrill of mischief, she built structure like a shelter. Our relationship had always been a lively tug. My pranks, her order. My spontaneity, her planning. It was a balance that worked, until the prank I pulled last week. Emily had poured weeks of careful labor into a major presentation for her public speaking class. Each slide was arranged with exacting thought, every phrase practiced until it sounded effortless. The project was important to her. More than a grade, it was a declaration about who she was and an opportunity to secure a coveted place among her peers. To me, it looked like an irresistible stage. In a moment that began as mischief and ended in regret, I swapped her flash drive with one containing our family's trove of embarrassing home videos, imagining a shared laugh when the surprise revealed itself. One midnight I slipped into her room, heart pounding with the thrill of the covert swap. She slept as if cradled. I worked like a furtive player in a heist film, replacing her carefully labeled drive with my prank-ready version. I left convinced I'd left no trace, certain of a quick chuckle and an even quicker reconciliation. Morning came, she practiced, and I watched her go, feeling a rush of anticipatory glee. At the auditorium I haunted the back row, excitement a drumbeat in my chest. Emily stepped up, radiating composure, and when she plugged in the drive, the projector did not summon her polished slides. Instead, it projected our childhood captured in motion. A crown of spaghetti, the tumble from a bike, a mud-streaked battle from childhood summers. Laughter swelled through the room like a tide. Shock froze her briefly, then color rushed her face. She fought to recover, but the momentum had slipped away from her. As the laughter grew, comprehension settled in my stomach like a stone. This was no light-hearted pivot to a shared joke. It was an obliteration of an effort she had poured herself into, the product of late nights, practice, and all the small sacrifices that had made her ready. When her eyes found me, the look that met me was not amusement but betrayal. She yanked the drive free and fled the stage, tears cutting tracks down her face. I followed after, apology already forming like a limp script. At home I heard only the hollow sound of absence. Her door was shut, muffled sobs leaked through. My whisper of, "I'm sorry," dissolved against the wood. When our parents learned what had happened, their anger echoed, but it was Emily's sorrow that mattered most. The fault line in our relationship opened wide. She called me out then, not with shouts but with a measured, chilling calm. "It's time," she said, and led me to the wardrobe. I felt exposed and flummoxed as she presented me with feminine garments. A lacy bra, soft panties. What followed felt like a ritual of reckoning. I protested inwardly and outwardly, but her expression allowed no negotiation. Reluctantly I dressed. The fabric against my skin sparked a swirl of emotions. Discomfort, curiosity, an odd flicker of thrill. Emily guided me into a dress that hugged unfamiliar curves. It framed me in a silhouette that felt both alien and oddly right. She sat me at the vanity and resumed her role as teacher. With deliberate strokes she adjusted my face. The steady hands I'd watched apply her own presentation-ready makeup now transformed me as well. Each layer she added seemed to sheath me in another lesson. When she was finished, she took a step back and examined her work like an artist appraising a painting. "There," she said. "You look stunning." She uttered a name, Alexa, and that small syllable landed heavy, an identifier freshly minted. That transformation did more than redress me. It exposed the complicated terrain of consequence and intimacy. Her chosen response to my betrayal was both punitive and oddly tender. By making me wear what she selected and guiding me into a different way of being, she enforced the discomfort I had caused and, at the same time, invited empathy through a closeness I had not anticipated. It was a lesson in perspective. To see myself as she might see me, and to feel the vulnerability I had put her through mirrored back onto me. In the quiet aftermath, the house felt rearranged. My prank had been memorable certainly, but not in the way I wanted. It had cost me something I hadn't thought to price: trust. The makeover left a residue of revelation. Underneath the performance of stilettos and lipstick was a quieter curiosity. About selfhood, about how clothes and posture could shape perception, and about the strange pleasures and dangers of being seen differently. What came next was uncertain. Forgiveness, if it came, would be gradual. Banter might return, but filtered by caution. I knew one thing with a clarity that steadied itself like a beam: my mischief would need a new rule. From now on, the question would come first, before the prank, before the laugh: is the joke worth the person? That one simple test, I realized, should always be the gatekeeper to any prank I considered.